A horrifying secret. Couple films killing of 5 children, then disappears without a trace. A family of 7 faced an unprecedented tragedy in which 5 children were brutally murdered, while their parents mysteriously disappeared. What shocked the police was the horrifying scene at the crime scene, where the bodies of 5 children were piled up in the bathroom. Their necks tightly bound with wire, and their jaws grotesquely disfigured. So, who was responsible for the murder of these 5 innocent children? Could it have been their own parents who cruelly carried out this act, or was it the barbaric doing of a ruthless killer? Join us today as we uncover the truth behind this case in our video. This is a true crime case adapted in a 2D style. The story took place in September in Jian Village, Hualien County, Taiwan. Here, every evening after dinner, residents would walk along the alleys to enjoy the cool evening air. However, in recent days, anyone passing through the alley on Jiakang Road had to cover their nose and quickly walk by due to a foul stench permeating the area. Initially, residents thought the unpleasant smell might be coming from the street's drainage system. However, as time passed, the stench not only persisted but intensified, causing some people to take detours to avoid it. Families living near the alley couldn't endure the increasingly horrific smell any longer. Finally, they decided to report it to the police, hoping the authorities could investigate and uncover the true source of the mysterious foul odor. On the afternoon of September 8, as soon as they received the report, the police quickly launched an investigation. Before long, the police began to focus their suspicions on house number 25 in the alley, where a family of 7 resided. It was the home of Lu Ji-chin and his wife Lin Zhen-mi, along with their 5 children. During the investigation, several residents informed the police that they hadn't seen this family for several days. What worried everyone even more was that the closer they got to the house, the stronger the foul smell became. With many unanswered questions, the police approached Lu Ji-chin's front door. However, despite repeatedly knocking, they received no response from inside. Even standing outside, they could smell the overpowering stench seeping through the door. Sensing something was amiss, the investigative team decided to break down the door to search inside. As soon as the door opened, they stepped into a pitch-dark room, and immediately, a strong putrid smell filled the air, making everyone feel nauseous. Nevertheless, they pressed on, following the stench up to the bathroom door on the 3rd floor, which seemed to be the source of the horrific odor. When the police tried to push open the bathroom door, they found that it would only open about 30 centimeters before being blocked. Something heavy inside seemed to be preventing it from opening fully. With a strong shove, the door finally opened, and at that moment, the police were utterly shocked by what they saw. In the small bathroom, only about 2 square meters, 5 bodies were stacked in a horrifying scene. The victims were bound in cramped positions, their heads covered with black plastic bags, their necks tightly wound with wire. Their hands and feet were tied back with wire, and their bodies wrapped in blankets. The scene was so tragic that even the most seasoned police officers had never witnessed such a horrifying death. After examining the bodies, the police confirmed that the 5 victims were indeed the 5 children of Lu Ji-chin. The eldest son was only 18, just entering university, while the youngest was just 9, only in 4th grade. Autopsies revealed that all 5 children had died from suffocation, and when the forensic team removed the wires from their bodies, the victims' jawbones were nearly detached. Upon closer inspection, the police found that the door gaps, ventilation, and drains in the bathroom where the bodies were hidden had all been sealed with tape. Not only that, but the doors and windows were also locked tightly from the inside, with no signs of forced entry. The police concluded that the killer had intentionally done this to prevent the smell from escaping outside. This also clearly indicated that this was a premeditated murder, meticulously planned and prepared. But what worried the police even more was that Lu Ji-chin and Lin Zhen-mi were completely missing. An ominous feeling crept into the minds of the investigative team, fearing that the couple might have been threatened or could even be in mortal danger. Given the urgency of the situation, the police immediately mobilized forces from various departments to launch a comprehensive search. Meanwhile, at the crime scene, police continued their thorough inspection, leaving no detail unchecked. In the living room and bedrooms, they found scattered cash and gold jewelry everywhere. The fact that the valuables were intact but strewn around indicated that the killer wasn't after money. The police concluded that this wasn't a simple murder for financial gain. Just then, an officer discovered 2 notes pleading for help on the first floor of the Liu family's house. A 1,000 Taiwan dollar bill was placed under an ashtray in the living room, bearing the message, House 25, Alley 258, held captive, urgent. Please call the police. The second note, half a sheet of A4 paper, was rolled up and tucked under the door gap, stating clearly, House 25, held captive. Children in critical danger, please urgently call the police, SOS. After comparing and analyzing the handwriting, the police confirmed that these notes were indeed written by Lu Ji-chin himself. As the police were piecing together the clues, another officer discovered an additional important detail. At the bathroom door, police found 3 cigarette butts that had been fully smoked. Notably, the brand of cigarettes differed from the type Lu Ji-chin usually smoked. Forensic analysis revealed that the DNA from the saliva on the cigarette butts belonged to a single man, but it did not match Lu Ji-chin's DNA. The police immediately focused on identifying the owner of the cigarette butts, believing it could be a crucial lead in solving the case. Based on DNA comparisons, the police quickly identified the person as Lu Ji-chin's friend, Mr. Xiao. Mr. Xiao stated that he had visited the Liu family, but it was on September 1st, and he hadn't returned since, which didn't align with the time of death established by the forensics team. Furthermore, Mr. Xiao provided an alibi, and after a thorough investigation, the police concluded he was not involved in the case. However, a casual remark from Mr. Xiao gave the police something to ponder. He mentioned that he had smoked while chatting with Lu Ji-chin in the first-floor living room and was certain he had left the cigarette butts in the ashtray there. So why were the cigarette butts found at the bathroom door on the 3rd floor? With the cigarette butt lead going cold, the police were forced to widen the scope of their search, combing every corner for more information. At this point, the police received a significant and suspicious piece of information from the Liu family's neighbors. According to the neighbors, the children usually took out the trash every day. But starting September 5th, it was Lin Zhen-mi who took out the trash, and from that day, none of the children were seen again. One time, a neighbor casually asked why the children weren't taking out the trash as usual, but Lin Zhen-mi just smiled without answering. At the time, the neighbors thought nothing of it, but recalling it now, they felt deeply uneasy. The police analyzed that the period around September 5 could very well be when the Liu family was murdered. Upon further investigation, they discovered that the times of death of the 5 children did not match. The first victim was the eldest son. He had just been accepted into university and was supposed to travel to Taipei on September 4, but the school confirmed that no one had seen him there. Next were the second and youngest sons. On September 5, neither of them showed up at school, prompting the second son's teacher to call the house to check in. According to the teacher, the person who answered the phone was Lin Zhen-mi, who said that the children were sick and would be staying home for a while. The teacher simply advised them to rest and then hung up. Based on the information gathered, the police speculated that the 2 children might have been killed on the evening of September 4. The third and fourth children still attended school on September 5, and they even had a physical education class that day. When their bodies were found, both were still wearing their gym clothes, suggesting they might have been killed right after school. As the case gradually unfolded, the police kept pondering one question: how could the killer murder all 5 children without making any noise? Surprisingly, not a single neighbor reported hearing any unusual sounds coming from the house. Under normal circumstances, if parents witnessed their children in danger, there would surely be resistance or shouting. Furthermore, the crime scene included 2 adults, the Liu couple, and among the victims was the eldest son, 18 years old, who was physically strong. Yet, there were no signs of a struggle at the scene, nor did anyone see any strangers around the area. It's worth noting that everyone in the alley knew each other. So slipping into the Liu home and murdering the entire family without attracting attention seemed nearly impossible. Moreover, based on the tools used, like the wire, tape, and the strategically placed cigarette butts, the police concluded that this was a meticulously planned massacre. The killer not only murdered but also carefully staged the crime scene to mislead the police investigation. Unless it was a professional killer or a criminal gang, it was hard to imagine a lone murderer managing to kill 5 people, then abduct the couple, without anyone noticing. The police speculated that the victims might have been drugged before being killed. Without delay, they conducted thorough toxicology tests on the bodies but found no traces of sedatives or poison. However, forensic experts discovered an important detail in the Liu family's home: a plant known as the jungle vine. This is a plant that indigenous Taiwanese people often use to catch fish. It has a powerful anesthetic effect. Simply crushing the stem to extract the juice and pouring it into water causes fish to become paralyzed immediately upon inhalation. If ingested by humans, the jungle vine can cause symptoms like vomiting and convulsions, and large doses can lead to suffocation. The most toxic part of the plant is its root. Notably, the jungle vine found at the Liu family's house was missing the root, which contains the highest toxicity. The police suspected that the killer might have used the jungle vine to sedate the entire family, rendering them unable to resist, and then proceeded to kill them. This led the police to narrow down their investigation, as the jungle vine isn't something that can be easily obtained anywhere. By tracing the source of this toxic plant, they believed they could track down the killer. But the most surprising revelation was that the jungle vine in the Liu household had actually been acquired by Liu Ji-chin himself, who had asked a friend to find it for him. This friend explained that Liu Ji-chin's second son needed the jungle vine for an experiment on anesthetic substances for a school project. So he trusted him and helped find an intact jungle vine. With these suspicions, the police began to thoroughly investigate the background of Liu Ji-chin and his wife, hoping to uncover more clues. At the time of disappearance, Liu Ji-chin was 48 years old, and Lin Zhen-mi was his third wife. Among his 5 children, the first 3 were from his previous marriage, while the 2 youngest were his and Lin Zhen-mi's children. Lin Zhen-mi was 13 years younger than Lu Ji-chin. When they met, Lu Ji-chin had not yet divorced his previous wife but brought Lin Zhen-mi to live with him, which his first wife couldn't tolerate, leading to their divorce. After marrying Lu Ji-chin, Lin Zhen-mi treated all 5 children as her own, and overall, the family had a fairly harmonious relationship. Lu Ji-chin was a photographer who partnered with friends to open a company specializing in printing and computer image processing called Magical Family, which had expanded to 3 branches. According to investigations, the couple owned up to 17 credit cards, with a total debt of 16 million Taiwan dollars, equivalent to around 6 million yuan. A close friend revealed to the police that Lu Ji-chin had once lamented to friends, "If we can't come up with the money, my entire family might not survive." At that time, the police immediately investigated Lu's connections to underworld groups and those who had lent him money. But no substantial results were found. Just when the case seemed to be at a standstill, a witness unexpectedly reported seeing Lu Ji-chin's car at Jian Station. By this point, 2 days had passed since the police filed the investigation. On September 11th, the police rushed to the scene and, through surveillance footage around the area, discovered that the Lu couple had driven to the station, left their car, and walked away. Surprisingly, they were unaccompanied or monitored. In fact, they freely moved about and even stopped by a nearby convenience store to buy coffee and buns. With these new findings, the police grew increasingly suspicious that the Lu couple was involved in the case. First, upon re-examining the tape in the bathroom, police found an incomplete fingerprint. After reconstructing and comparing it, they were shocked to discover it was Lu Ji-chin's fingerprint. Moreover, through investigations at major supermarkets in Hualien, police learned from an employee that the tape and wire used in the case were purchased by Lin Zhen-mi herself. However, what made the police even more certain of the Lu couple's involvement was a digital camera found at Lu Ji-chin's company. Using data recovery techniques, the Hualien police restored some images from the camera, and the results stunned everyone. The police did not release details but disclosed one of the photos. The camera had captured Lu Ji-chin personally murdering his 5 children. In the photo, Lu Ji-chin was wearing white shorts, a dark blue shirt, kneeling on a light blue bedsheet, and tying a death knot on his daughter. The police confirmed that the victim in the photo was Lu Ji-chin's eldest daughter. Based on her clenched hands and bent legs, it seemed she was still alive, appearing not to resist as her own father bound her. Although experts did not find images of Lin Zhen-mi in the footage, based on the height of the angle from behind Lu Ji-chin, they concluded that the person holding the camera might have been Lin Zhen-mi herself. Considering her previous strange behavior, the police were almost certain she was the one who took the photo. Once the police identified the perpetrators as Lu Ji-chin and Lin Zhen-mi, they immediately issued a wanted notice. The last sighting of the Lu couple was at the train station, after which they disappeared without a trace. The police reviewed all surrounding cameras but couldn't determine where they went. And the station records didn't show that they had boarded any train out of the area. However, the wanted notice began to yield results as multiple witnesses reported sightings. Someone claimed to have seen the couple driving a truck in Guangfu district. And a convenience store clerk also reported encountering a man resembling Lu Ji-chin purchasing items. However, every time the police followed these leads to suspected locations, they arrived just a step too late and found nothing. They even employed all available investigative methods to catch the Lu couple. For instance, on the Qingming festival, they stationed undercover officers at the cemetery where the 5 children were buried, hoping the couple would visit their graves. Additionally, they thoroughly checked communication logs of the family and friends for any trace, but all efforts were in vain. After numerous attempts to locate them failed, the police seemed to be at an impasse. However, about a year later, a hunter climbing Mount Xian stumbled upon a hard white object deep in the forest, an area rarely visited. On closer inspection, he was startled to find 2 empty eye sockets and realized it was a human skull. Terrified, he immediately notified the police. When the police arrived at the scene and began their investigation, they discovered 2 complete sets of remains. Preliminary forensic examinations confirmed that the bones belonged to a man and a woman, and the time of death was at least over a year ago. Beside the 2 skeletons, police found scattered shoes, some torn clothing, a few bottles of pesticide, and several food containers. Most of these items had deteriorated over time, making identification difficult. However, a distinctive pair of gold-rimmed glasses caught the attention of the police, as they closely resembled the kind Liu Ji-chin had worn before his disappearance years ago. Without delay, they conducted a DNA comparison of the remains with samples from Liu Ji-chin and Lin Zhen-mi. The results were shocking. The 2 skeletons were indeed those of Liu Ji-chin and Lin Zhen-mi. The police speculated that the couple might have been overwhelmed by debt from their failed business and decided to murder their 5 children before seeking to end their own lives. Based on the forensic results, Taiwanese authorities concluded that the 2 suspects were deceased. So they closed the 5 Lotus children case as officially resolved. However, this case contains so many inconsistencies that it has left many people pondering. If the Liu couple wasn't coerced and committed suicide after killing their children, why did they stage the scene as a locked room murder and leave behind pleas for help and cigarette butts? If the purpose was to create a fake crime scene, why flee as far as 2 kilometers? Additionally, the police were notably secretive about the videotape, citing that the content was too sensitive. And their conclusions about the cigarette butts and help notes seemed somewhat biased. Interestingly, the Liu couple's landlord was a police officer, which raised considerable suspicion among the public. Some citizens believe that the Taiwanese police deliberately directed public opinion towards the idea that the Liu couple murdered their children to cover up their own incompetence and allow the real killer to walk free. Others speculate that the couple was manipulated by a sinister cult, leading them to commit such heinous acts against moral principles.
Next, please follow the case. On November 23rd, a horrifying massacre occurred, resulting in the deaths of 6 members of the same family. Notably, the perpetrator wasn't a stranger, but a family member. The person responsible for this tragedy was 29-year-old Li Lei, a relative within his own family. The unfortunate victims included his parents, wife, sister, and his 2 sons, one aged 6 and the other just 18 months. What could drive a man to such brutality, killing his entire family, and what led him down this path of inescapable crime? Join us as we explore the mysteries behind this haunting case in today's video. On the night of the crime, between 11 p.m. and dawn, Li Lei systematically used a knife to kill each member of his family. The first victim of his cruel attack was his wife, who had been by his side for many years. The bond of marriage couldn't stop the rage in Li Lei's heart, and he killed his wife without hesitation. After killing his wife, he then targeted the rest of his family. His sister, who was playing on her computer at the time, was also mercilessly murdered. Next were his parents, the two people who had brought him into the world and raised him, and they too were not spared his brutality. At that point, only his two children were left in the house, one just 6 years old and the other only 18 months. In a fit of rage, Li Lei completely lost control. Instead of stopping, he continued to act coldly and heartlessly. Without hesitation, he turned his hands against his own children, the small lives he should have protected. His anger turned him into a monster devoid of humanity, and in a short time, his entire family was killed by his own hands. After murdering his entire family, his parents, wife, sister, and two small children, Li Lei stood in the house, now alone with the 6 lifeless bodies of his loved ones. Instead of being scared or feeling remorseful, he calmly and coldly wiped the blood off his body, as if what had just happened didn't concern him. The next day, Li Lei calmly left Beijing, following a prearranged plan with a friend to go to Shenzhen. He left as if nothing had happened and continued on his way to Sanya, where he planned to hide after committing the crime. However, his calm and cold demeanor couldn't last. On the way, the police tracked him down and quickly arrested him. Meanwhile, back at Li Lei's home, worry among his relatives began to grow as days passed with no word from his family. Initially, they thought that perhaps Li Lei and his family were just busy or out of town. But as their calls went unanswered and no one opened the door during visits, concerns about something bad began to deepen. Soon, several relatives went directly to Li Lei's house, hoping to find an explanation. But when they arrived, the door was locked. The family then sought help from the building management and used a ladder to climb into the house through a window. As soon as they entered, a horrifying scene unfolded before their eyes. Bodies were scattered across the floor. They immediately called the police. When news of the massacre committed by Li Lei spread, everyone who knew his family, from relatives to neighbors and friends, was left in shock and disbelief. No one could believe that a family known for their happy, prosperous, and peaceful life could meet such a catastrophic end. To outsiders, the family had always been seen as exemplary, always harmonious, with no sign of major conflicts within. In just one night, that family was destroyed, and what horrified everyone the most was that the perpetrator was Li Lei, the son, husband, and father in the family. According to collected information, Li Lei was involved in businesses related to pawn shops, mortgages, and providing credit card cash withdrawal services. These jobs had the potential to bring in substantial income, and through them, Li Lei earned a considerable amount, enough to build a more financially comfortable life. Although some may have viewed his work as unconventional, it still provided financial stability for Li Lei. Beyond his earnings from work, Li Lei's family had also received compensation from a government land clearance project. The compensation amounted to over 5 million yuan, a large sum, enough for Li Lei's family to live comfortably without financial worries for a long time. Thanks to this compensation, combined with Li Lei's business income, his family maintained a comfortable and happy standard of living, with no signs of financial hardship. Outwardly, they were seen as a successful family living a prosperous life, admired by many who knew them. However, beneath that exterior, hidden conflicts and tensions had quietly built up, leading to the tragic disaster that followed. In his personal life, Lillet was married with 2 small children. His youngest was only 18 months old, and the eldest had just started school. His small family appeared to live in peace and happiness, at least in the eyes of those around them. Lillet was also regarded as a good father, caring for his family, with no signs that would raise concern among others. Before the horrifying crime took place, Lillet, his wife, and other family members had attended a relative's wedding. At the event, everything seemed normal, with no signs or incidents foreshadowing the terrible events to come. Those who attended, including family and friends, all saw Lillet behave normally, as he usually did at family gatherings. He appeared cheerful, sociable with everyone, without any behavior or expression that drew attention or caused concern. No one, not even the closest relatives of Lillet's family, could have imagined that just a few days later, his entire family would be brutally murdered, and that he would be the killer. On the surface, no one thought Lillet could be a man who had lost his mind, ready to kill his entire family. So, what drove him to such brutality and to commit such an unimaginable crime? And when Lillet's confession was made public, the story began to become clearer. Lillet was born into a family where his parents' expectations for their children were always exceedingly high. From a young age, his parents constantly emphasized that he had to become successful, attain social status, and most importantly, make them proud. They believed that in doing so, Lillet would not only benefit himself, but also bring honor to the entire family. However, these expectations didn't stop at motivational words or encouragement. They turned into strict, demanding requirements in both his studies and daily life. From the moment he entered elementary school, Lillet faced unavoidable pressure from his parents. They demanded that he be the top of his class, not make any mistakes, and always follow strict family rules. If not, he would face severe punishments. This created relentless tension throughout Lillet's childhood. Whenever he failed to meet his parents' expectations, he faced their extreme anger. His parents didn't just stop at scolding or reprimanding him. They frequently resorted to corporal punishment to teach their son. The repeated, harsh beatings left scars both physically and mentally, turning his childhood into a dark and painful experience. Moreover, Lillet's father was a heavy drinker. Almost every night, he came home drunk after long drinking sessions. In his drunken state, he lost control and often took out all his frustrations and anger on his son. On nights when his father came home drunk, Lillet knew he would have to endure his father's violent behavior. His father had no hesitation in using a belt to unleash his rage on Lillet's young, fragile body, sometimes without any clear reason. Memories of his father's drunkenness, irrational anger, and harsh words haunted Lillet throughout his childhood. Over time, Lillet no longer saw his father as someone to be respected or loved, but instead as someone to be hated and despised. Each drunken fit, each beating, and every harsh word deepened Lillet's growing hatred for the man who had brought him into this world. From this relentless pressure and abuse, Lilay grew up with a heart full of hurt and resentment. The pressure from his parents' unrealistic expectations and the violence from his father gradually pushed him down a path of crime that no one could have foreseen. At 17, unable to bear it any longer, Lilay decided to run away from home and find a way to live on his own. Despite being lazy, playful, and having poor academic performance, Lilay was intelligent and resourceful. After leaving his family, he quickly found ways to make money and built a life for himself without relying on his family. Lilay achieved considerable success in the business of credit card cash withdrawals and trading mortgaged assets. He also invested in the massage industry and reaped many rewards, amassing wealth through his own efforts. However, despite these achievements, which were admired by outsiders, his parents didn't value them at all. In particular, Lilay's father always looked down on his way of making money, considering it dishonorable work. His father always wanted him to pursue a respectable career that would bring pride to the family. The disappointment and pressure from his family created deep conflicts between Lilay and his parents, ultimately leading to the tragedy that followed. Meanwhile, after Lilay got married and had children, his once close relationship with his wife began to change. His wife worked in multi-level marketing and often asked him to financially support her business ventures. It didn't stop at just asking for money. She constantly criticized and scolded Lilay, intensifying the conflicts between them. This added even more pressure and frustration for Lilay in his family life. Lilay's younger sister, though still in school, often sided with their parents and mocked her brother. On the day of the incident, at a family wedding they all attended, Lilay's father publicly humiliated him in front of friends and relatives. His father not only belittled his work, but also continuously insulted him in front of everyone. This humiliation was the final straw, prompting Lilay to decide to eliminate all members of his family. As for his two unfortunate young children, in his madness, Lilay believed that if no one in the family survived, then his children would have no one to care for them. He thought it was better to end their lives early than to leave them abandoned, with no one to rely on. After being arrested for murdering his entire family, Lilay openly confessed to all his crimes and fully cooperated during the interrogation process. Thanks to his cooperation, the investigation and trial proceeded quickly and smoothly. In the end, with the serious charge of murdering his loved ones, Lilay could not escape the death penalty. Before his execution, following customary procedure, Lilay was allowed a final 10-minute visit with his family. His uncle and aunt came to see him, listening to his final words. In those moments facing death, Lilay expressed deep remorse. He said that if he could start over, he would cherish his previous life and never act so cruelly toward his loved ones. Lilay's uncle, who had once been furious and wanted to attack him in court, had by this point calmed down. He listened to Lilay's final apology and realized that Lilay was suffering from deep inner torment and regret. Lilay admitted that after everything he had done, he couldn't face the loved ones he had so cruelly killed with his own hands. In his final moments, Lilay pleaded that when he was buried, he not be laid to rest alongside the people he had murdered. After speaking, Lilay, shackled and handcuffed, knelt down and bowed before his uncle and aunt. Looking objectively, it's clear that Lilay's family also made mistakes in the way they treated him, contributing to the tragedy. In particular, his father's failure to provide Lilay with proper guidance from a young age led to the formation of extreme resentment in him. As he grew older, Lilay's parents never offered him the understanding or support he needed. The lack of communication and mutual understanding between parents and children deepened the gap between them, ultimately leading to the tragic outcome. Although during his confession, Lilay mentioned being abused by his father as a child as a reason to justify his brutal actions, this does not lessen his legal responsibility for what he did. Additionally, Lilay spoke of his wife's constant demands for financial support, along with complaints from his mother and sister. Many believe that the main cause of Lilay's twisted personality largely stems from his childhood experiences, especially with his father. Lilay's father frequently beat him whenever he was drunk, trying to use violence to discipline his son in hopes that he would succeed in the future. However, this violent method of parenting was deeply flawed. This is what fueled Lilay's hatred toward his father. Even after Lilay grew up and made his own money, their relationship did not improve. Lilay's father still did not acknowledge his work, considering it an illegitimate profession. He regularly belittled and scolded Lilay, which only further fueled the hatred inside him. If, before the crime happened, the family had sat down with Lilay, listened to, and sincerely shared with each other, perhaps this horrific tragedy could have been avoided. However, family conflicts can never be an excuse for murder. No matter the circumstances, Lilay's way of resolving things not only defied societal moral standards, but also severely violated the law. This cruel act could not escape justice, and Lilay had to pay for the crime he committed. Although outwardly appearing to be a happy and perfect family, there were hidden conflicts and tensions within. Lilay's family is a prime example of how everyone had their own secrets and emotions, leading to an unspoken rift between members. The tension and accumulation of negative emotions over time gradually broke down the close relationships between parents, spouses, siblings, and children. As a result, the bonds between family members were severed, and the tragedy occurred when the entire family was destroyed by the hands of one of their own. From a legal standpoint, the domestic abuse by Lilay's father was against the law. Lilay could have sought legal measures to protect himself and seek help. Regarding his wife's excessive financial demands, Lilay could have chosen to divorce her to escape the situation. Unfortunately, instead of controlling the malice in his heart, Lilay allowed resentment to take over, leading to an unforgivable crime. Besides facing criminal charges, Lilay also had to compensate the relatives of the 6 people he murdered. The specific compensation amounts would be determined based on regulations concerning damages for violating a person's life. The compensations included funeral costs for the 6 victims, living expenses for Lilay's wife's parents, compensation for the victims' deaths as prescribed by law, and emotional damages for other relatives of the 6 victims. The reason Lilay had to bear civil liability was that his act of intentional murder not only involved criminal charges, but also violated the right to life of others. Intentional murder is one of the most serious crimes in the legal system, and even though the death penalty may be the harshest punishment the offender faces, it is not enough to alleviate the pain endured by the victims' families. Imprisonment or the death penalty serves to punish and deter crime, but the wounds suffered by the victims' families, especially the emotional loss, cannot be compensated by such punishments. For this reason, civil compensation becomes extremely necessary and important. While it cannot bring back the lost loved ones, financial compensation can help the victims' families cope with immediate difficulties. When a person dies, their family not only suffers emotional pain, but also faces financial difficulties due to the loss of a breadwinner or supporter. Civil compensation is a form of economic assistance that helps the victims' families overcome the material losses they face after such a great loss. It is not only financial support, but also a way to demonstrate the offender's responsibility for the consequences they caused. Compensation is not just about economic help. It symbolizes recognition of the damage that the victims' families have endured. It shows that society and the law not only focus on punishing the offender, but also have a responsibility toward the victims who have lost loved ones and are left with unhealable pain. While financial compensation cannot fully heal the emotional wounds, it can somewhat ease the pain and help the victims' families move forward and overcome their immediate challenges.